1 minute or so.
Heard the senator's on his way.
Great, thank you. Members, just basic ground rules on this bill is that we don't have the power or the authority to change anything in this. You could make any comments you want, but we're going to ultimately vote this up or vote it down. So this is not a part of the negotiations. It's just a matter of moving it to the next step.
Thank you.
Welcome, Senator Correa. How are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Honorables. My apologies for running late. It's just
No problem. Please.
the time of the year, so to speak. Here to present to you Senate Bill 151. Some of the parts of this MOU, which is really a package of 6 MOUs, have been on the works for 6 years. As you know, lots of parts of SB 151 have been covered by the press, and I'm hard to say that there are no secrets here. This has been a bill that's been in print for a number of weeks. It's been analyzed, reanalyzed, and so it's here for public view. And I believe at the end of the day, and I'm hoping you'll agree with me, that this is good for the taxpayers of the state of California. This MOU, SB 151, covers 6 bargaining units. Number 2, attorneys. Number 6, correctional peace officers. Number 7, protective service and public safety. Number 9, professional engineers. Number 10, scientists. Number 13, stationary engineers. Again, it's a big bill, but these are what I consider some of the key elements of this bill. Number 1, it has over $350 million in savings from the pension changes, primarily the increase in contributions of an additional 2 to 5% of base pay towards pensions, increasing the retirement contribution to 8 to 11%, again, resulting in over $350 million in savings to the taxpayers. It also eliminates the defined contribution plan. This will stop 2% contribution to bargaining unit number 6 employees' base pay. For this defined contribution plan, savings will be $137 million. There is a salary increase that will kick in at the end of this MOU, which is 2013, and only the employees at the top of their step of their salary range will see that pay increase, and this will offset their increase in pension contributions. This pay increase will take them back to their salary level they enjoyed or had 5 years ago. The cost of the salary increase to taxpayers is about $152 million. So if you take $350 million in savings minus $152 in salary, that still leaves $200 million of savings through the life of the MOU to the taxpayers. Other important aspects, what I consider very important to SB 151, especially to bargaining unit 6 on the management side, which is essentially that the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation will maintain, it's actually enhance their flexibility to manage the correctional system while keeping them meet and confer over effects of such changes. But very key here that if you have negotiations over management changes, after 30 days of good faith negotiations, if no deal or understanding is reached, then the last and best final offer is then implemented. I believe this is a tremendous win for management, especially in managing our correctional system that, as you know, has had major challenges the last 4 years in terms of management. Also, I want to be clear that under this MOU, leave time is not considered time worked for overtime purposes. Also, this MOU provides 2 non-cashable leave days per year, but those either you use them or you lose them. Other important issues that have been covered by the press is the removal of the cap on accrued leave. This is a very complex area, but let me try to break it down. It confused me when I first looked at it, but the more and more you look at it, you understand the reason why it's so confusing is because there is no cap. But yet this MOU removes the cap. There is no cap. According to the DPA, there's no cap, but yet there's a state policy that says there should be a cap. But this policy is rarely, if ever, followed by the state. So this cap through this MOU that doesn't exist is now formally non-existent. Now, why would you not follow this state policy of a cap? Well, as you know, a correctional institution is a 7-day, 24-hour-a-day institution. If you have somebody take their vacation, then that means somebody has to cover for those individuals, which means you essentially have to go out and hire more correctional officers or guards to guard the correctional institutions, which means you put financial pressures in other parts of the system. So, again, the cap is now removed formally. Other issues on the accrued leave, there's been discussion that the accrued leave can be used at the end of a person's career to spike their pension. Let me say that that is against the law, and being against the law, that status quo is maintained in this bill. What you can do with your accrued leave is at the end, when you're ready to leave, you can cash it in like everybody else does and pay taxes on it and walk away. Another issue that's been discussed is the furlough program. This SB 151 does end the furloughs in March instead of June, which means the state loses 9 furlough days, yet SB 151 calls for 12 days of leave over the next 12 months. So you have 12 days of leave over the next 12 months, which means the state is a plus, but you lose 9 because of the furloughs eliminated. At the end of the day, the state picks up 3 days, so the state is ahead. Mr. Chairman and Honorables, I present to you SB 151.
Thank you very much, Senator Correa. Anybody here do you have witnesses to testify?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Tom Dyer. I'm with the Department of Personnel Administration. We're sponsor of this bill and available for any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Other witnesses for?
Mr. Chairman, members, Steve Baker with Aaron Reed & Associates, representing the professional engineers in California government, one of the bargaining units included in support.
Craig Brown for the California Correctional Peace Officers Association in support. I want to emphasize what Senator Correa said. I left corrections in '96. The cap wasn't enforced back then for the simple reason, as he outlined it, you have to budget for somebody else. So if you want people to take their leave in corrections, you need to augment the budget drastically, and you can eliminate the leave balances, but I don't think you got money to do it drastically.
Mr. Chair and members, Pat Moran with Aaron Reed & Associates, representing the California Association of Professional Scientists in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Brooks Ellison on behalf of CASE, California Attorneys, Administrative Law Judges, and Hearing Officers, Bargaining Unit 2, in support.
Mr. Chair, members, Kobe Pizzati with California Statewide Law Enforcement Association, Bargaining Unit 7, in support.
Any other witnesses in support? In opposition?
Thank you, Senator. I'm doing well, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We are opposed to the bill for reasons mainly centered on fiscal grounds and not the good work done by so many of our corrections employees and others involved in these bargaining unit negotiations. Simply put, while there are, according to the Legislative Analyst's Office, savings in the first part of this contract, those savings do evaporate towards the end of the contract, and we believe will result in general fund costs potentially totaling upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars. And we just don't believe the general fund can support this when we have a $26 billion budget deficit. So for those reasons, we'd ask for your opposed position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other witnesses in opposition? Members, questions, comments? Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to thank the staff and the individuals involved in bargaining these contracts. I think it's been a very hard time for state employees over the last few years, and I do recognize the sacrifices they make, and I will be supporting this package. Thank you.
Mr. Warkowski.
I wanted to clarify some of the savings, because the staff report that we have on page 2 is saying that in fiscal 2010-2011, we believe there's going to be $527 million worth of savings. Now, there's a little bit of erosion because of the furlough days that you refer to. Can you give me some idea of, is that 5%? Is it how much does that cost will cost the state in lost savings?
We've incorporated the savings of the first 9 months of furloughs in our costing to get to the $520 million in the savings for the current fiscal year. So the 9 days that will be eroded will be offset by the PLP days that are in this contract.
And likewise, the total savings over the life of the contract is 563. So there's additional savings that will go on beyond fiscal year 2011. It might not be as large as well. Some people would like it larger, but there is additional savings. Is that correct?
That's correct. The increased, mainly that's coming from the increased pension contributions between 2 and 5% of these affected employees. Those are going permanently in statute that will be ongoing, as well as another is the elimination of the defined contribution plan with bargaining unit 6 that the Senator referenced. That will be approximately $42 million a year under this MOU.
Thank you.
Mr. Mansour.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With all due respect to Senator Correa, I don't believe that this is good for the taxpayer. It's the same type of MOU that has gotten us into our current situation. And again, there's 1 year of savings, but long-term costs, and I don't see that as being good for the taxpayer. And the most important thing is that there's no meaningful pension reform, which should come first, and I haven't seen that, and I believe that is not good for the taxpayer either. Thank you.
With that, we've been talking about the 6 in this MOU, but there's 21 bargaining units for the state of California, correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And the 21 bargaining units have settled all over the last year and a half. Would that be fair to say?
That's correct. We had our first MOUs with the first 6 bargaining units that were ratified by this legislature last August, and then SEIU came in October, and these are the final 6 remaining bargaining units.
And of the 21, is there a constant relative to the addition of payment of the employee from their base pay to their pensions?
That is correct.
And that is the one ranging from 2 to 5%?
That's correct.
And isn't it also correct that in terms of who's paying this increase, it's for existing employees as well as new employees?
That's correct. And those changes are permanent in statute that will be ongoing.
So in terms of looking at the savings and looking at the issue of costs, when we get down to the bottom line, I think although in this MOU we're dealing with 6, I think if we look at the 21, then it paints a bit of a different picture. And I think in terms of the long range and something that people I'm sure understand, but this is called negotiations. It means that both sides enter into a relationship and understanding, give and take as a part of this process. So as you look at this, sometimes you look at what the management side of the table got in terms of concessions and improvements relative to their point of view, and then you look at some other things that were given in terms of the issue of the employee units and bargaining units. Then at the end of the day, we sort of look at who comes out in terms of savings. The thing that for me is the most compelling about all of these bargaining units that have settled, not only the 6, but the 21, is that structurally included in it is pension reform. Now, whether the amounts wanted and gotten or where we need to be, that's, I'm sure, up for debate. Some people are never going to be satisfied. Other people are not ever going to want to give. So I think this is a negotiated result, something very, very positive. I think also a point that the senator made relative to maintaining the ability of the Department of Corrections around the issue of management and looking at the ever-changing picture relative to our prison situation in the state of California was a big win for management relative to being able to be relatively nimble as an institution and as a bureaucracy to deal with these changes. I think also that in terms of one of the things that's been in the newspaper, the story around the unpaid leave and whether it was capped or not capped, there are other issues that we need to look at that don't have an impact on pension but come to us vis-a-vis these MOUs. So when you sort of weigh this all out, in a perfect world, maybe certain things would be better in terms of looking at what the bottom line would be in terms of savings, but this isn't a perfect world. And again, that age-old cliche maybe that we use too much in this building, but letting the perfect be the enemy of the good sometimes gets us in a pretty bad place. So I urge a yes vote on this. I know it's been tough sledding, and I really appreciate the work that was done under Governor Schwarzenegger, as well as the follow-up work being done under Governor Brown. And I think, if anything, we can come away with absolutely the belief that we're going in the right direction relative to savings and relative to being able to do this at the bargaining table. So I think overall this is a plus. I also know that this is not the end-all, be-all and the panacea for the issue of pension reform, but in terms of where we've been, where we're going, I think there's definitely good steps in the right direction, so I urge and I vote. If there's any other comments from the members? Thank you, Mr. Wachowski. Second, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. We can have a roll call vote, Wendy?
May I close?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Senator.
Mr. Chair, here and your will of the chair. Let me just say I thank everybody for the good comments, and Mr. Mansour, thank you for those good discussion on those points. But I wanted to close by emphasizing a couple of points that you made. Number one, on the management side, that's a big win for the state of California, and that was a win that the Schwarzenegger administration was looking for, and that's part of this MOU. In terms of the amount of savings, absolutely correct. Some say, 500 million. Some say 100. I think 350 minus 150, meaning $200 million, is a good solid number to rely on. It's not too high. It's not too low. But again, this is just the savings on the life of this MOU. The other savings that we haven't even discussed here are the savings from the pension reform. The new employees, you're essentially looking at a second tier, which will have to work longer for lower benefits, and the existing as well as the new employees will have to pay more into the pension system. So overall, I believe the taxpayers win in this. Is it too much or not enough? That's another subject to be debated. But again, this is what you have before you, SB 151. It's good to the taxpayers. I ask you for an aye vote.
Thank you very much, Senator. Wendy?
Furutani?
Yes.
Furutani, aye. Mansour? No. Mansour, no. Allen? Aye. Allen, aye. Harkey? Ma? Ma, aye. Wachowski? Wachowski, aye. The bill is out.
The bill is out. Thank you very much, Senator. We'll leave the roll open for Ms. Harkey. She's on her way.
We'll try to go work her for the vote.
Thank you.